We will be addressing the death penalty. According to Death Penalty Focus, in 2013, the total number of inmates in death row within the U.S. were 3,108 people. Out of those 3,108 people, 62 of them were females. The U.S. could save millions of dollars just by revoking the death penalty. They could also bring a sense of relief to the grieving families if the inmates were to suffer as they did. It would be best to abolish the death penalty because it would save money to use for resources to fight crimes as well as help the families of the victims by giving them money that the inmates earn. We will be discussing the issues dealing with inmates being sentenced to death, who is to blame for the issue at hand, and how we as Americans can fix this problem.
Inmates of death row should be sentenced to lifelong imprisonment and work to pay back the families of the victims they acted brutally against. Proposition 34, which was put on the ballot in 2012, asked voters to modify the death penalty to lifelong sentence without parole. It is a long-term way for the inmates to suffer for crimes they committed and a way for the families to get a peace of mind as well as benefit the economy financially. Death for inmates have downsides because they commit crimes knowing that if they get caught, they will be out to death, and they still commit acts of violence. They also know that the money being used to kill them won't go to safety groups. When the government keeps inmates for life sentence, more tax money is being spent because they have to be fed, medical, and housing. That money can be used for the families of the victims. Too much money is being spent, which can be used for other causes such as medical. The money can be used for the criminal justice department to make it stronger and increase the jobs. The money being saved can be used to hire more police officers and to take those who deserve death penalty off the streets. That will cause less harm to people and they wouldn't have to worry about being in the streets late at night. There have been mistakes in the past, and in The Truth About Parole, Condemned to Die in Prison, they address the fact that prisoners who are condemned to die in prison are not given any special treatment, have less access to programs, and are housed in security with few privileges. They should continue to be imprisoned for life with the help of some safety groups to keep them off the streets with money acquired. Now that we have discussed the issue of death penalties, we will discuss who is to blame.
There is an attitudinal inherency that is to blame for the lack of policy change. The policy is there, but people's values outweigh the better judgment. Families of the victims are clouded by grief. They fail to see that murderers and rapists knowingly commit crime with death in mind. But if they were sentenced to lifelong imprisonment, that may dissuade or discourage them from committing more violence. Long-term families would also see an economic difference in safety agencies that will result that with the resources could provide more efficient work to stop criminals. The families should be for lifelong imprisonment so the killers can suffer just as they did and for as long as they did. According to the article, The Truth About Parole, Condemned to Die in Prison, from the website American Civil Liberties Union of Northern America, they blame the families of the victims for failing to see the benefits of condemning murderers to lifelong imprisonment. They should be sentenced to life prison without the possibility of parole, to actually stay in prison and remain in prison. There are no protections that can hold their case longer, meaning that those who are sentenced to the death penalty spend years and years of mandatory appeals that they often result in reversal. The families also fail to see that the death penalty is more expensive than condemning a person to die in prison. According to the website deathpenaltyinfo.org, the cost for pretrial and trial is $1.94 billion. Automatic appeals are $925 million. Federal habeas corpus appeals are $7,075 million. And the cost for incarceration is approximately $1 billion. If those who were sentenced to death penalty would have been convicted to LWOP, the immediate savings will have been of $1,770 million per year and a savings of $5 billion over the next 20 years. We have now covered the ill and the blame. Now we will discuss the cure, the way to solve the initial problem.
California's Proposition 34 should continue to remain on the ballot and voted yes on. By keeping Prop 34 on the ballot and voting yes, inmates can suffer for as long as the families and friends of the victims. Murderers can now know and really think about committing crime before they do it. Because if Prop 34 is voted yes on and wins, they will be put to a quick death but receive a long-term punishment. In order to prevent potential murderers from choosing to kill someone, they need to see that the death penalty isn't going to be an option anymore. They can work in prison for the remainder of their lives. In addition to this, if voted yes on, another benefit is that the remainder of the money not used for the death penalty and on the equipment to kill inmates would go to law enforcement to better aid them in developing a stronger safety group. The families who remorse do so for quite some time, especially when the victims are children who aren't old enough to have achieved anything in life. The families are so hurt by this that they see death for inmates as an only option to get even or make up for the life taken from them. An option they don't consider at the time is no parole imprisonment. Families lose sight of the idea that they could make criminals suffer as they have, and not only that, but the economy would also benefit. Kyung Law from CNN Justice did an interview with inmate Joseph Paul Franklin on November 19, 2013, and found very shocking news. Franklin was asked why he killed some 79 people, to which he replied, "I felt like I was at war. The survival of the white race was at stake." Franklin compared himself to a U.S. soldier in Vietnam, doing the Lord's work. Many people, including the families of the victims, may have witnessed this, and at that point wanted him and murderers like him to be put to death, even though keeping him alive is an efficient way to give the law enforcement money and to keep the inmates suffering. Also, the death penalty takes time and money, more money than most people can comprehend. Publicist Jimmy Carter wrote an article in the Los Angeles Times in 2012 when Proposition 34 was first put on the ballot. Carter stated studies shows that 88% of the nation's leading criminologists believe that swift and certain punishment is the best deterrent. The death penalty is neither swift nor certain, with the appeals process in California lasting an average of 25 years. Most inmates who are sentenced to death instead die of old age. Inmates are dying in the prison in the time it takes just to set up the equipment and to go through procedures of killing them. Rather than wasting all that time and money, they can work in prison and give all that money not being used to law enforcement agencies. This is a superior option when it comes to economic development and safety. This will help prevent crimes from being committed and is the more reasonable option.
The death penalty should be abolished because not only does it not reduce criminal activities, it also takes money that could be in use in a more beneficial way. Inmates for too long have felt that death penalty was an easier option and acted out because of it. Lifelong imprisonment is a long-term punishment and one that will make inmates see they don't get an easy way out of making people's life miserable. We told you about the problem with issuing the death penalty, the additional inherency which is to blame for the lack of change, and the solution to the problem. Death penalty is easier option for inmates but not for the government or families. Money can be put to a better use. Inmates need to know they will suffer and families need a peace of mind. Vote yes on Prop 34 and make all the difference.